Hi guys, today this little video I'm going to make today is some possibilities that you may see when you are dealing with sort of narcissistically structured families. So typically, in these families, there can be different variations, but quite often there is a narcissist in the family that's coupled with an enabler or a codependent. Not always, but that can be the case where you have somebody that's sort of pathologically selfish coupled with somebody who's like a pathological giver, and both of those characters have a sort of high level of dysfunction. But you also may see a real emphasis in these families on what is presented to the outside world. So it's like an image of perfection and a real focus on like the surface, and that perfection can be in the guise of high display of wealth, but it can also be in a very subdued display of wealth, but more a focus on sort of intellectual elitism. So you may have, these families can be almost like cults where they're like, we are better than everyone, we are smarter than everyone, and our goal is to present this this mask of perfection to the world, that we have no issues, we're perfect, everything's perfect. And then internally these families can have a lot of chaos, and sometimes the chaos is very obvious in the family structure when they're not sort of out in public, and other times it can be a very quiet sort of hidden chaos where it's all internal, and that chaos can manifest in that these are people that can be very exacting, very perfectionistic. There's a lot of, there could be a real withholding of love. It could be that, in the family, like the focus is on external achievements, on accumulation of wealth, but no consideration or focus for, say, the children's actual moral character. No emphasis on honesty, integrity, decency, kindness, those things. More of a focus on, we are going to give you approval based on your performance. So if you perform well, we're going to give you approval, rather than, we love you unconditionally no matter what you do. We of course want you to succeed. We of course want excellence out of you, but there isn't such a strict focus on sort of perfectionism. So that can exist in these families, and the kids growing up in these families, it's like, it can be kind of almost like growing up in a cult. Like you grow up in this family where you are taught that, our family is better than everyone else, and you must perform, you must achieve. And a lot of times that achievement is really about the parent's ego. So the parent wants to look like a perfect or good parent, and it's their child's job to uphold and maintain that image of perfection for the parent. And sometimes there can be extreme trauma in these families, from 0 to 5. Other times it's simply objectification. The parents can put the child on a pedestal, and the golden child is perfect and they can do no wrong, and they're just, what's not to love about this child, and like everything's totally perfect, right? So when you do that to a child, when you objectify a child and make them, put them up on a pedestal, you're expecting perfection from them, and you're giving them sort of adulation and accolades for performance. So what that child learns is that they confuse love for approval, because they're not really getting love, they're just getting approval based on their performance. So sometimes that can be the case. Other times you can have a lot of chaos that's very obvious. You can have, sometimes you'll have a borderline personality disorder with somebody who's narcissistic, and you can have like histrionics that go on in the family, and everyone sort of ignores those. So there can be, quite a few different makeups in these families. But in general, the idea is that they're all about presenting an image of perfection no matter what's going on inside. So quite often, the parents might not be really curious about the child's internal emotional life. Like, how are you feeling? How are you coping? How are you, making it through emotionally through these difficult times? And a lot of times, these are families that don't talk about emotions. They don't talk about feelings. They don't talk about what's going on inner life. Their only focus could be on achievements or intellect instead of, consideration for that child's emotional sort of situation or emotional being. So, you may see that in these families, and sometimes you'll see parents being in competition with their kids. You'll see that a lot. Sometimes you'll see the parents pitting the kids against each other. So that if the kids in the family, maybe they're in extreme competition with each other, which prohibits them from actually being close. And sometimes that competition is very overt, and sometimes it's very subtle. It's under the radar. It's not obvious, but there's this underlying tension of competition going on. And sometimes in these families, you could be in the family environment, and like the parents may, be together, but there's like a quiet hatred. Or if there's sort of divorce, there can be this quiet, seething rage that maybe is not spoken, but you can feel it, right? So sometimes there's a lot of like silent rage. These are families that have secrets. They typically do not communicate with each other honestly, in an honest fashion. There's a lot of triangulation. So you might see one parent, like instead of speaking to their child directly or their grown child directly, they may call the sibling and use like sort of triangulation. That happens sort of a lot in these families. Sometimes you'll see emotional incest where one of the parents isn't getting their emotional needs met from the other parent, so they will put that burden on the child. That also can happen in these families. So you just have a lot of sort of dysfunction in these families. Some sort of, could be like, narcissistic codependent structure. You have a taker, you have an enabler. There could be hidden addictions. There's just a lot of sort of dysfunction, and it can manifest in many different ways. But one thing that's very sort of consistent is that we send an image of perfection no matter what is going on in reality. So that's that's really delusional. It's really distorted, and really it's dishonest, right? Because that's not really the truth of what's going on. So I don't know if, I know this is not totally coherent. I kind of rambled all over the place, but that's just from what I've learned from speaking with quite a few coaching clients and some people who have been raised in the family structures, as well as quite a bit of the research that I've done. So I hope this helps you, and I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy the sunshine. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.